My friends, for this audio recording goes out largely to my friends. But you are free to share this video to all the people you know or believe that it is appropriate. I decided to make this record because I had been approached by quite a number of people in the last half year about questions of conscience. You all know that our Western societies are now deeply divided, and divided in an angry way, not just in a simple matter-of-fact division like societies usually are. The older people among you may remember that when in the 1970s or 80s or 90s, we had people on the left and people on the right, religious people and not religious people, and all sorts of difference of opinions, and sometimes they were heated. But overall, we had a way to live together, accepting maybe not our views, but went on in a largely peaceful life. And whatever angry, aggressive, and lying people on the radical left may claim, we were constantly making progress for the liberation of people. In all those decades after World War II, the situation for women, situation for sexual minorities, the situation for blacks or any other ethnical minorities in regions all over the West constantly became better. It was not always an easy progress, but life as it was in the 80s, 90s, and the beginning of the millennium was a life that had become better and better, and not perfect but very good. And anyone who honestly remembers this time and honestly look back at this time knows that it is true. I say this because as it is now, anyone who is not radically left is vilified in levels that we have not seen ever in the history of modern world. So I have been approached by many people who are not right-wing, who are not conservative, largely. Most of them are just liberals, or mild conservative, or people who are pagans who do not wish to share in some radical form of Christianity, or whatever the case may be. I was approached by people, and for the last year or so I was not giving people advice. I was not replying to this. I was saying, I don't know your situation, you have to know yourself. Because deep down I did not want to be responsible for that. When I feared that when I say something, people might make a choice, and they might have to live with something that I said, and I feared that responsibility. Let me tell you a story, because how this came to be. Many years ago, there was a very good friend of mine, and she lived in California, where she loved to live. But her boyfriend was not a very good boyfriend, and she is a very liberal, open-minded person, and her only choice, because of her health problems, she depended to live with someone. And her only choice was to move to her mother's family in another part of America, where people are much more religious, in a very rural area, and suffer the extremely right-wing religious Christian views of her mother, which she did not share. And I said to her, you need people to look after you, so rather move to your family, because family is the safer thing than a boyfriend. And she did. And it was a great misery, and is a great misery, where she lives under the heavy oppressive thumb of her family. And out of that terrible experience, I said to myself, I never ever give advice to people. But one thing first, this wonderful person told me I told her that, and she said to me, that is bollocks. I should never think about myself like this. And she is her own person, making her own decision. And whatever advice people give, the people who do are responsible alone. And it was putting me to great shame, and still for many years, because I know a lot of people, especially in the United States, where the situation is much more complicated and much more dire than it is here in Germany and in Europe and Western Europe. So not knowing that, knowing that I knew not well the situation in America, I was reluctant to give advice, especially to people in America. Because I know there are people on the religious right who are very uncompromising, harsh, demanding, and frankly want your subjugation. And there are on the left radical people called woke, called social justice, called whatever you may call them. And I firmly believe they want total subjugation under their ideology just the same. Today there is much debate about evil right-wingers, evil Nazis, and evil communists, and evil left-wingers. Let me say you one thing. I'm a gay man. I believe in the idea what is generally called the Declaration of Human Rights, a society of civility, a society of peaceful harmony and living together. That is a society that I would wish to be. But things have changed, and we are now confronted by people to whom compromise is no longer what they wish. They have changed the game rules. So we are forced with a now proverbial and possibly in a not too far future real war. If there will be a civil war in Western countries or not, I cannot see. But there is an ideological war. The reality is this, and this is as I see it, and you may believe me or you may believe me not, and I cannot bring proof, because otherwise I would have to speak 10 hours and go to great lengths. What I'm 49 years old, going 50 soon. I've read newspapers and watched news since I was 15, so I can claim at least to have been following politics for quite a long time. I'm not saying it to boast, but just so to know who it is who is speaking. I've studied sociology and history, so history and politics are sort of a thing which I spend quite a lot of time following. As I said, in my heart of hearts, I define myself as a centrist and a classical liberal, and I wish a society where everyone can live his own way and harmony, and live and let live are the rules of society. But the reality is there has been arisen a side which is extremely powerful, which does not want this. They want the world complete. For they think in a black and white manner that everyone who is not with them is against them. That is the reality of things. And another reality of things is there are a lot of people now I hear who wish peace. But what they mean, maybe not consciously, is I want to be left in peace. Now trust me, a lot of people who approached me, I love dearly as friends, and to whom you know me, let me assure you, I will love you and respect you no matter what you decide in this matter. If you decide to hide and wait this out, you will not lose my love. As we should act towards people, because confronted by a power which controls so much of the mass media, of the entertainment system, of internet platforms, and of course in politics and other spheres, and which has shown such ruthless will to lie, to slander, and to literally destroy the lives of people, in some sad cases even kill. I understand that fear, trust and believe me. You have your jobs, you have your friends, you have your families, and if you speak up what you truly believe in, the risk is very, very real that you will lose all of that. That you will be fired from your job because that is what they do. That your family will break up with you, never to speak a word with you. And you will lose all your friends, because I know I have. But there was something else which happened afterwards. I learned to meet new friends. You see, I would not wish this to be a confrontational world like this. But the other side has burned down all bridges of compromise to a way that even they cannot retreat anymore. This is what you must understand first and foremost. They've put themselves into a radical corner where they cannot return to compromise. So no amount of words, persuasion, arguments, debates, or even elections, as the example of the United States has shown, can ever make them think otherwise. I am and was never a fan of Donald Trump as a person. But I had firmly believed before the election that if Donald Trump should win and the Democratic Party and the left-wing radicals would be defeated at the ballot box, that they would use it as an opportunity to rethink maybe what they have possibly done wrong, if they maybe had gone too far to an extreme which the majority of the Americans did not want. But they did not take this opportunity, but on the other hand, they did the exact opposite. They went even more radical, even more brutal, even more lying, even more ruthless. And this is a lesson which I took from especially that there is no way we can improve the situation through appeasement. I know that comparisons to history, especially very dark times of history, are never entirely true. But just as a parable, if you wish, there was a time that my country was ruled by someone who wanted the world, whose name I shall not name because you know why. He wanted the world, or at least a substantial part of it. And to him, and I've studied as a historian his actions and the actions and beliefs of his followers in great detail, to them, every compromise was just a sign of weakness of the enemy they wanted to exploit. On the other side believed for a very long time that they could appease this political power in Germany. And the result was much, much suffering, much death, when maybe saying stop, we shall not compromise any longer in an earlier time, might have stopped that person at that power. Now, I'm not saying that we will facing millions of deaths, gulags or concentration camps or the likes, but taking it as a parable, waiting in the hope that the other side comes to senses, may cause much more suffering for many people. And the problem here is, or the thing that you have to keep in mind here is, first, the other side will not allow any place of life untouched. They want control of thought over every aspect of life. There is and will be no place where you can hide from them. They will want your absolute and total obedience, the control over everything you say and believe, and well, they will test it and check it time and again. There will not come a point where they will win and then you will be left alone. Because if you look at the system of fascism and communism, the latter which I have experienced, at least from the outside, living in West Berlin for almost all my life, that was a country which had to fence in their own people and shot everyone who wanted to leave it. I was living 500 meters away from the Berlin Wall, and in the night when the window was open, I could hear the border dogs howl. And these dogs were trained to kill all the people who wanted to leave that country. That is the face of socialism, which I still vividly remember. Now you will hear from people who lived in East Germany, well, I have lived my normal life as a carpenter or an office clerk, yes. There were a lot of people in the Third Reich who lived their normal jobs in offices, in, I don't know, whatever they did. But there is one story which my mother once told me, and it is like this. My mother's mother, in the time of the Third Reich, had a sort of inflammation on the hand, something that was harmless, but it was something visible. And my mother told that her mother, in the time of the Third Reich, was mortally afraid and was putting gloves over her hands because she was afraid that if the Nazis would see that, they would suspect something like unworthy life, because that was part of the ideology and they were unreasonable and crazy about this. So like you could explain 1,000 times, it's just a rash, it's not something really serious. But the reality we have to face is, and especially if we look at the recent development, is these people are not rational people. They're not people to which you can explain something. There are people who literally say that science is evil white man's colonialist oppression. So, or logic. They deny logic. They deny science. Not all of them, but enough of them. And the problem is, even if among the left a majority of them is not like that, which I may believe, the deciding voices are like that. And if I know something about history, both in socialism and fascism, which both at great length as a historian I've studied, It is the most radical and the most irrational and the most vile and the most evil people who decide what happens, not the timid, not the moderates on the other side. Just look at the story of the Soviet Union. There were moderates too, but they did not live very long. What I want to tell you is this. Waiting out in a situation faced by an enemy who wants the world entirely will make it worse. Second, there will be no place where you can hide. Or the alternative is you will live an entire remainder of your life in fear to be found out. And you have to make it up with your soul if you truly want to live in a world where your opinion is constantly checked by powers of the overlords, where you constantly have to lie about what you believe if you want to live in such a world. But above all, there are other people out there who cannot fight for whatever reason. They're overwhelmed by fear in levels they may not be able to overcome. They're physically weak. Children who are vulnerable to propaganda. Minorities who are abused in their own fears and manipulated. And many other people who for various reasons may not be able to fight for themselves, and we who can have the obligation now, the duty, to fight for all of them who cannot fight for themselves, and to set the example for those who do not dare. For everyone is believing, oh, something must be changing. But it is always someone else who should do this. And this is not how the world functions, my friends. The only thing that evil needs is for the good people to be silent. What I'm meaning is, I do not expect you to take up arms, to go into trenches, to fight into wars. There is only one simple duty which you have before your conscience, your soul and your integrity. Your duty, from which nothing can absolve you, is to say what you truly believe, what you truly think. You do not have to yell at them to be in an angry, irrational manner, even though I understand many of us are angry and justly so. If you can, try to be diplomatic, try to be calm, because that leaves a much stronger impression on top of it. But this is my true belief, that the duty from which nothing can absolve you is, you must speak what you think. For if in the face of an enemy who wants to control your thoughts and your beliefs, if you forfeit this out of fear, you turn yourself into slavery. And I am sorry, but I truly believe that no peace and no prolonging of life and no comforts is worth living as a slave. And slavery it is, even if a slavery in your well-paid position and surrounded by people who are supposed to be your friends, who, if they would not accept you, would never were. And I know that the prospect of standing alone with no job is a terrifying prospect. But even if it may be a little bit an irony, when a pagan quotes Martin Luther, and I suppose it is a quote from the New Testament, but this is a sentence which resonates especially in these days with me very strongly, and it is, what good would it be to man if he gained all of the world and yet would have damage on his soul? All the enemy needs is all the good people to remain silent. And the only duty in this war, and the war it is to say, I disagree. Think of this. And may whatever you believe in give you the courage to find the strength to say, I disagree, and my opinion is otherwise. Thanks for listening to me in this now 25 minutes, and I wish you all the best.